Week 5 of the 2024 NFL season is in the books. I'm Josh. This is Cody. We're the Checkdown Chumps. Remember to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the show. We'll be here with new episodes every Wednesday this season. If you've been watching for a bit now, you might notice a couple aesthetic changes that we're playing with. On top of that, I'm sick this week. Cody's also sick, so we decided to do this from home. So we're going to see how this goes today. This week, neither of our teams got to play, right? Eagles, Lions, both on a bye week. And somehow both teams still managed to lose. And by that, I mean every other division opponent won this week. The Packers, the Bears, the Vikings, the Cowboys, the Giants, Washington Commanders all won this week. On top of that, I think our picks were pretty trash. Cody, I don't know about you. I went 6-8 this week.
Oh wow, I went 7-7.
Okay.
Yeah,
So not great. You beat me this week. For me, that brings my total to 44 and 34. You're saying you went 7-7?
seven
Oh,
and
so
seven.
you're 35 and 43. So I got a bit of a leg up on you still. I think partially because of my week one, just how good it was, which I think was a fluke. I was 14 and 2 that first week. Every week since then, it's just been getting worse and worse and worse. Um, yeah, this is it's been tough pickings for us the last few weeks. I don't know.
Well,
Um,
week one was also my best week at 9-7.
ooh,
Yeah,
all right.
so
Uh,
I'm gonna need a fluke week to catch back up to you, I think.
I think over the course of the season, you'll gradually get back to where I'm at and surpass me, I'm sure.
We'll see.
All right, how did you feel about this week? How'd it go?
It's pretty chaotic.
Right? Yeah.
There's a lot of mediocrity I'm noticing happening around the league. So teams like the Kansas City Chiefs are able to stand out in front of everybody else, not because they're having a great season, but because they seem to be the only well-run team in the league at the moment. And I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit more detail when we dive into some of these games. But a lot of mistakes, a lot of drama happened today, which I'm sure we'll get into quite soon here, and I'm excited for it.
All right. Well, speaking of that, let's jump right into the games. Thursday night football. We had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers visiting the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons were favored in this one by a point and a half. I couldn't figure out why. I picked the Bucks. I was so confident. I even took them as my lock in the pool that I'm in, and the Falcons won this one in overtime. Now, first off, I'll just say close divisional games for Thursday night football. That's what I like to see. It kind of seems like it's been, so many years now where Thursday night football matchups are not exactly like actual primetime matchups or primetime worthy matchups. So this was pretty good to see. And it was pretty crazy. It was a pretty crazy game. Now, so obviously I was wrong about this pick. I thought that the Bucks defense, after what they had done to Philadelphia the previous week, I thought they were going to win this game. But obviously their defense has not gotten enough pieces back, and with the guys that are there, they haven't figured it out yet. So this one went back and forth, but it was the ending that was really crazy. Late in the game, over six to go in the fourth quarter, down 30 to 27. Atlanta has a chance to tie this game up, right? They go for the 54-yard field goal, but it gets blocked. And so if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're feeling pretty good. But unfortunately for Tampa Bay, running back Bucky Irving would fumble on the ensuing drive to deep in Falcons territory, actually. Um, so not good. But then just four plays later, just past the 2-minute warning on 4th and 15, when the Falcons need a first down, Kirk Cousins throws an interception to Levante David. So now at this point, the Bucks have the ball at the Falcons' 28-yard line with under two to go. So you're assuming the game is over. But on the ensuing drive, Tampa Bay runs for negative yards. They then take a 10-yard holding penalty, and before you know it, they're actually forced to punt the ball. They had to punt the ball on fourth down late in this game. So incredibly disappointing that they couldn't put the game away in that situation. That's just a failure. And you heard some of the players talk about it, how sick they felt after the game that they couldn't put it away in that situation. Now, for Atlanta, they would end up driving the field and kicking a 52-yarder to tie the game as time expired. And then in overtime, we know what happened, right? They win the coin toss. They go down the field, four plays, 70 yards, including a 45-yard touchdown pass to Cordero Hodges. And yeah, the rest was history. So incredible finish. Kirk Cousins finished with over 500 yards, spread the ball around. Looks like Atlanta, they're kind of putting together what we expected, coming into the season. This was the best case scenario for them, putting all these pieces together, hoping it would turn into a dynamic offense. And this is the week I think that, you kind of saw it all come together. I mean, the stats were crazy just for all their skill position players. Bijan had the quietest day, and he had 61 on the ground. You look at receiving, Drake London 150, Darnell Mooney over 100, Kyle Pitts with 88 yards. He seems to be kind of unlocked this year. So crazy game offensively for them. And then for the Buccaneers, you know, nothing too insane. I mean, Baker had the 3 touchdowns to no picks, which is always good to see. 19 for 24. That's very nice. But no one cares about that. What they're going to care about is the fact that their offense couldn't put the game away at the end when it mattered most. So, crazy game. Great way to kick off, I think, week 5. What did you think about it?
Yeah, you mentioned that the Tampa Bay offense was unable to seal the deal late in the fourth, but I want to point out the fact that Tampa Bay's defense was unable to get a stop in that last drive. Now, if we just fast forward to the end of the game, there's only 12 seconds left in the clock in the fourth. Tampa Bay calls a timeout, and Atlanta only has the ball in the Tampa Bay 43. So they basically have to get 15 yards just to get in field goal range with only 12 seconds left and no timeouts. And they complete the pass over the middle to Drake London. It goes for 14 yards, and they somehow manage to spike the ball with only 1 second left. But the problem for Tampa is that they shouldn't allow Atlanta to get to the line that quick. I mean, with only 1 second left, you have to like sit on somebody, push somebody down, cause a little bit of chaos or at least enough chaos so that Atlanta isn't able to get to the line so swiftly and smoothly and be able to clock it with 1 second left. It
Well,
looked like they were almost encouraging Atlanta to get that snap off to spike the ball to give them the opportunity to kick the field goal. And that comes after they just called a defensive timeout to talk about the situation. So I understand that the offense didn't do its job in securing the ball long enough to get the job done, but I'm very disappointed in Tampa Bay's defense that last play of the game. That anything else happens in that situation and they don't get that field goal off. So I think that's also a defensive collapse.
the whole game was a defensive collapse for Tampa Bay. I
Yeah,
mean, you,
that's true.
you can talk situationally, but just talk about the game as a whole. I mean, how many yards of offense did the Falcons put up here? I think it was over, yeah, 550 yards of offense, right? Kirk had over 500 passing yards. Now with the sacks as a team, that it dips the passing numbers down a little bit. Now they did hold them to 73 rushing yards, but that doesn't really matter when you're throwing it as successfully as they did. Now the yards per play was actually pretty even for these teams. 6.5 for the Bucks, 6.8 for the Falcons. And it was a close game. Like the Falcons had to come back at the end to tie it up to get to overtime. So it's not like situationally the team wasn't playing as best as they could. I think the defense, you give up all those yards, but you feel pretty good about only giving up 27 heading into that last drive, right? Considering how many yards of offense the Falcons had. So,
Yeah.
it's a rough game, and we know Tampa Bay is missing some guys on defense still, and it's been hard for them. And every week you don't really know what to expect if it's a game like this where they give up 500 through the air, or if it's a game like last week where they, keep the Philadelphia Eagles in check on offense. So you don't know what to expect with this team. Week to week, I get nervous picking their games, man, because like I said, I was so confident this week. I took them as my lock, and yeah, now it just came back to bite me. So.
Yeah,
eh,
I was confident in them too. I mean, now Atlanta takes the division lead at 3-2 with the win
with the
over Tampa
with the
Bay
tiebreaker, yeah.
with the tiebreaker. Yeah, and all of their games this year have been within one score, and all three of their wins have been fourth quarter comeback game winning drives.
Yeah.
So I think it would be good for Atlanta fans if they could go out and put up a dominant offensive performance in one of these upcoming weeks and show that they don't always need to come from behind in order to win late in the fourth. But at least they are doing that, and Captain Kirk is showing the reason why they wanted him there in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a good game,
Yeah.
very good game.
And speaking of Kirk, it reminds me of that Vikings team from a few years ago where, they had 13 wins. 8 of their wins were fourth quarter comebacks. And you just knew it wasn't sustainable. And by the time they got to the playoffs, we know how they got upset by the Giants. So you're hoping that the Falcons can kind of start playing a little bit more of a well-rounded game where they're getting decisive wins, they're making statements, they're not having to do all that kind of stuff. But for now, I don't know if you're a Falcons fan, I think everyone had a little bit of hesitation in their excitement for the year. So at the very least, you're having a good time.
Yeah, just before we move on to the next game, I would like to point out that Atlanta is the worst team in the league through 5 weeks in terms of average starting field position.
So they're
Um,
overcoming that.
they are overcoming that. However, going back to the data I put up a couple of weeks back, it's not a good sign, and they need to improve in limiting turnovers, getting better at returning kickoffs, because there really is a big gap between teams who start past the 30 versus before the 30. And Atlanta is the only team in the league right now whose average turning field position is less than a 25-yard line. So something that they need to work on. And if they do clean that up a little bit, I think it'll turn out to be successful for them in the future.
Well, that'll push them into the next tier, right, of teams because they're playing with a little bit of a handicap if that's going on with them right now. I would be more concerned if they had the best field position and they were only able to barely beat teams and they were in all these close games. So the fact that there's room for improvement and it's a tangible thing that we can look at and identify, I mean that bodes well for them because that can't really get any worse, right?
That is true.
Yeah,
That is true. But like you said, come from behind wins, it's not sustainable. So,
right.
yeah.
All right, moving on. We had a Sunday morning game. We had
Mm.
in the UK, we had the Jets technically visiting the Vikings. The Vikings were the home team in this one. Took the Vikings to win. Sure enough, they did. Um, Not a game that's going to win any beauty contests, I don't think, but the Vikings win streak continues nonetheless, now 5-0. The big story, of course, was the firing of Robert Saleh on Tuesday. Pretty interesting to me that the game that was kind of the breaking point for ownership was an international game where you lose to an undefeated team, okay, by only 6 points, so by less than a score. This tells me that ownership basically already made their decision, and we're just working on their, you know, plan for moving on behind the scenes so that, the season doesn't get completely squandered, so the season's not a wash. Which to me, I don't know what that implies. I don't know if that implies that they're communicating with other coaches on the staff or what's going on behind closed doors, because there's no way that this game was actually the tipping point. I mean, you lost to Denver last week. So we'll talk about that more. But as for the game itself, I mean, yeah, ugly game. These international games, I think you're just happy to survive without any, major injuries. And, for the Vikings, your team gets the win. I think you're over the moon. Um, but yeah, like let's talk some more about this Jets situation, Cody. What do you think about this? At the very least, they didn't make Hackett the head coach, right? So they dodged a bullet there. Although I think to be fair, if they're doing the responsible thing, they would have fired him first.
They should have. Um, the only reason he's there in the first place is because Aaron Rodgers wanted him there.
Yeah.
And Robert Saleh didn't go out and throw 3 picks, including a pick six, to
Nope.
lose their team the game on Sunday. So he's definitely a scapegoat. I don't think that it's going to make a big difference. I think the Jets have a lot of problems internally, and firing Robert Saleh isn't going to fix that. Now, as you mentioned, they must have talked about this prior to Sunday, uh, most likely after the loss to Denver, considering how ugly of a game that was for New York. But uh, unless Aaron Rodgers starts playing like the Aaron Rodgers of old, because winning does kind of heal all, and their defense is good enough. Where as long as he's playing somewhat up to his potential, like we saw before the injury, they'll be able to win games. They actually outscored the Minnesota offense.
Yeah,
It,
they
it was
did.
the pick six that was the difference in the game. It was a great play by Van Ginkel, but an awful decision by Rodgers.
He's
So
got two of those on the year now, Van Ginkel.
yeah, he does. I mean, he and the Vikings now lead the league in pick sixes with two. So, I mean, maybe we're going to see a few more from him before the end of the year. He just seems to have a knack for that kind of thing so far. But props to Minnesota going 5-0.
Yeah.
They lead the league in turnovers with 9, tied with Vegas and Tennessee through 5 weeks. So very it's good that they managed to overcome all of those turnovers to be 5-0 at this point. Because typically, when you turn the ball over as much as they do, it doesn't correlate to winning games. But I guess they've just been able to overcome that in the matchups they've had on the back of the passing attack from Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson. So I'm looking forward to see what they can do going forward. However, I don't think their schedule gets any easier from here, considering how strong that division is. They still have to play everyone within a division twice, I believe, and none of those games are going to be a cakewalk. So
No.
it's going to be interesting to see how the division plays out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, fun statistic for me to see today. The top three teams in the league in forced turnovers, so like defensive turnovers. Number
Mhm.
one, the Packers. Number two, the Vikings. Number three, the Bears. So, F me, I guess. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, it's good. That division right now is the best in football, and
Yeah,
it's just going to be a slaughter fest when those teams start playing each other towards the end of the year.
yeah.
It's going to be very scrappy games to see who can come out with the W, and I'm excited to watch them. I think it's going to be great football.
Yeah, and with the extra wild card spot now, I mean, we could have the entire NFC North in the playoffs this year.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, based on the way the other divisions are going, uh,
Now, the Bucks
I
and the
wouldn't be
Falcons, one of
surprised.
those teams maybe, right? Between the Bucks and the Falcons might be in the one of those wild card spots, but
Perhaps, yeah, but I wouldn't put it past everybody from that division being able to make it in.
yeah. I think the Bears are kind of the one team in there that I would say kind of stick out as maybe not having the staying power. I know they got the winning record now, but yeah, I don't know how long that's going to last. Speaking of the Bears, we got the Panthers and Bears next. And the Bears won 36 to 10. So credit to the Bears. I believe we both picked them. Not much to say about this game. I mean, it's kind of one kind of middle of the pack team beating up on a bad team on a Sunday. So not much else to say. At least for this Sunday, that mediocre team is at the very least continuing to show growth and promise, which is what you want to see, especially from your young quarterback in Caleb Williams. He's continuing to grow and to impress. 20 for 29 on the day, 304 passing yards and two touchdowns, no interceptions, which is great. I know it's the Panthers, but hey, he's starting to look more and more like a quarterback, like an NFL caliber quarterback every day, which is, good news considering the first game or two of the season. The ground game for the Bears, I know last week they looked pretty impressive, finally. This week, I won't say that they're, looking like a great running game, but at the very least, they're looking like a functional NFL running game, at least by volume. So, we'd like to see that too. Again, it's against the Panthers, but sometimes you just need a string of games to kind of get right. And I think what we're seeing here is that running game paying dividends and taking pressure off of Caleb Williams. I think that's going a long way. So you got to be happy with that. As for the Panthers, I mean, yeah, not much to say about the Panthers. Not a good day from them at all. They're basically doing what you would expect from them. Only bright spot really is Chuba Hubbard, 13 for 97 on the ground and a touchdown. That's 7.5 yards a carry. Otherwise, they didn't really get too much going on the day. 3 for 12 on third down, not great. Only 14 first downs to Chicago's 24. Lost the time of possession, only 26 minutes to 33 and a half. Yeah, you had three turnovers to Chicago's zero. So not a good day at all. I don't know if you have anything to add about this game.
I mean, the game was the game. The Panthers are kind of a cakewalk team at the moment, it seems, although they did have that one impressive win when Andy Dalton came out and kind of shocked us all for a week. But now it seems he's settling back into what I expected him to be.
Yeah.
As for the Bears, as you mentioned previously, they are the team that's kind of on the cusp, in my opinion. Uh, they are 3-2. They do have the Jags, the Cardinals, and the Patriots, three of their next four. However, starting week 10, they have a very difficult schedule for the rest of the season. They have everybody in the division twice, the 49ers and Seattle. So,
They might get a couple wins in there.
excuse me, they might get a few, but if they, split these next four games, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to end up in a play. Oh, excuse me.
You good?
Yeah, I need a drink here.
All right. Remember to subscribe to the Checkdown Chumps.
Oh boy, good thing we're doing this remotely. But as I was saying, they need to win three of these next four games in order to have a chance because, um, from week 10 to week 19, that is a very difficult schedule to have to run through. And unless we see Caleb perform the way he performed these last 2 weeks going forward, I don't think the Bears stand a chance, even though they do have the third best defense in the league, according to expected points allowed. That is such a tough schedule that I don't think they're going to be able to win enough games to make it
Yeah. Well, at least for now,
in.
things are fine for Chicago. All right, moving on. We had the Bengals hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens would win this one 41-38. I took the Bengals in this game. I did. And I was feeling pretty damn good about it for most of the game. Um, but that Lamar Jackson guy just keeps them hanging around, you know. What a game for both of these quarterbacks. The Bengals are a team who are 1-4, but might have the best quarterback in the league, at least statistically right now. Joe Burrow nears the top of the league in just about every statistical category, and he's got this offense humming. He has 12 touchdowns on the year to just two interceptions, 274 yards a game, 113 passer rating, 72% completion, third most points scored in the conference, the Bengals have, and yet they're 1-4. Only behind the Ravens and the Bills in points scored. They have 140 through these first five games. I don't know what else this guy can do. He did have an ill-timed interception in this one towards the end of the game, but I thought the defensive back just made a really great play on the ball. But your defense, giving up 41 points, playing the way it's been playing the last few weeks, you're not going to meet those postseason expectations that we had coming into the season. Not if you can't play team football. So the longer this goes on, I think the more questions that I have and that other people are having, Bengals fans in particular, about the coaching staff. Offensively, they're scoring, though they do start sluggish every single year. They start the year unprepared. You got to look at coaching for that because right now they're in a hole, 1-4, or even if they play really great football, it's going to be hard, to make the playoffs at this point. Um, During their Super Bowl run, yeah, the defense was clutch and they were deserving of more credit and recognition than they got. But this year, their defense isn't really doing much. Now, if you listen to the Bengals fans, they've been unhappy with Zach Taylor for quite a while now. The pressure's on. We just saw Robert Saleh get fired. I don't know if the Bengals ownership is considering any changes to the coaching staff. And it might not start with Zach Taylor. It might start on the defensive side. I don't know. But I think something has got to give real soon, because if you don't start winning immediately, your season's cooked. Like there's nothing else to say about it. Like you can't be wasting these years of Joe Burrow's career, especially when he was coming into the season. You thought his wrist injury, you didn't think he was going to be, or you weren't positive he was going to be Joe Burrow, the real Joe Burrow. But he's playing, I mean, better than any quarterback in the NFL this year, or at the very least, just as good as anyone else. And you score 38 points. And we just played the Commanders a couple weeks ago. He did basically the same thing. He played a perfect game, but his defense couldn't stop anything, And it's not like they're going up against nobodies. They're going up against competent quarterbacks and offenses. But man, you got to do something. You got to get a stop here or there. You can't give up 41 points, especially when, I mean, Derrick Henry wasn't really getting going in this game. He ended up with 90 yards and 6 yards of carry, but a lot of that was on a long run he had at the end of the game to set up the game-winning field goal, right? He was held in check most of the game, and the Ravens were forced to throw it. Lamar Jackson had 42 attempts. That's usually not a good thing, but
No.
he threw for 348 yards, four touchdowns, and no interceptions. So you let Lamar Jackson be basically, the pocket passer, the drop back guy who throws over 40 times, and he tore you apart, right? That's not what you want to see happen. So for the Bengals, you got to figure out something because 4 wins, basically, you can't afford to lose three more games this year. Not in this conference, not in this division. It's too hard. You lose three more games, it's going to be very, very hard to be comfortable being in the playoff picture. It's probably not going to happen. So I don't know. What did you think about the game?
Well, you mentioned they had to get a defensive stop, which they did kind of in overtime with the fumble from Lamar Jackson,
Yeah,
recovered by Cincinnati. They do get the ball up at the Baltimore 38. Now, they run it three times for 3 yards. I would have liked to see a pass, in there, considering how well Burrow has been throwing the ball. They did have the pick at the end of regulation, so
Yeah,
I can kind of see where they're coming from running it three times, considering how much of a lock McPherson is typically from 50 yards.
yeah,
But of course, I think it's wide left, and Derrick Henry has that big run to put him, you know, 20 yards out. Oh, Jesus. So, you know, they don't just need to get stops here and there. The defense needs to be consistent. But the way that the offense is playing, um, oh God, I think I'm gonna have to get a cough drop quick.
all right, you can do that.
Okay, sorry
Take
about
a
that.
break. It's all right. Well, you were talking about the Bengals. We're back. Cody's feeling better. We're talking about the Bengals and the Ravens and Bengals defense and their issues. I don't think either of us really know what the answer is, but if you're a Bengals fan, you got to be pulling your hair out right now because you're wasting some prime years of some star players, and we know the team's potential. We saw it a few years ago, and it just feels like they're not even competing this year. Like, if they lose three more games, that's seven losses on the year. You're 10-7. Are you getting into the playoffs? Maybe. It's kind of a toss up, right? So, and if you do, then you're on the road every week, trying to
Yeah.
string a run together. So not looking good for them.
No. Well, three of their next four games, they have the Giants, Browns, and Raiders. So you expect them to come away with the win in each of those games. And then the fourth is against Philadelphia, but it's at home. And that's a very winnable game. So
Yeah.
you expect them to get at least three wins. But if they continue the trend, and they cough up one of those games to maybe they have a hiccup against the Browns, like that's disaster territory there. So
Yeah.
yeah, the defense needs to step it up and need to start getting wins immediately. Otherwise, as you said, they're wasting Joe Burrow's incredible season. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Browns, they seem to have the Bengals number at times. It's kind of funny. So,
Mhm.
you know, sorry Bengals fans making light of your pain, but it's all we can really do in these times. Tough times. All right. Moving on, we had the Bills going into Houston playing the Texans. Texans were favored a point and a half. I took the Bills. I was pretty confident. Texans have been playing some ugly football. They were 3-1. Now they're 4-1. Texans won 23-20. The Bills were down 20-3 in this game. They came back, made it a 20-20 game with over 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. But after some ugly, ugly game management, the Bills would have to punt to Houston from their own end zone with 16 seconds to go in the game, giving the Texans just enough time for one play for 5 yards, and that's all they needed. 5 yards, and they were able to set up for a 59-yard field goal in regulation, made the kick, won the game. Ugly game all around. Houston, like I said, 4-1 on top of the world. Josh Allen, he's likely concussed. NFL, they're under fire for allowing Josh Allen to come back in this game after looking like he died on the field. Um, yeah, I don't know. Bad look all around for everybody. Bad, bad look. What'd you think about this? How much of this controversy are you familiar with?
Well, I think the coach is also concussed, considering how he called that last Buffalo drive. Oh, like, what are you doing? I mean, you have the ball at your own 3 yard line. You go pass, 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 0 yards, zero completions. You start with 32 seconds left. You kick it back to them with 7 seconds left, and you give them the game essentially. You run the ball one time there, and as long as you avoid the safety, it goes to overtime.
Yeah,
So I don't understand. Like it looked like they were trying to win the game. Like they still wanted some revenge or vengeance from that Kansas City drive that beat them in the playoffs a few years back, where they managed to get the ball, I don't know, 50 some odd yards down the field with less than 30 seconds left to kick the game winning field goal. It looked like that's what they were trying to do in that situation, except that's not the time where you do that. You just try to get to overtime on the road, get the ball back and score and win. I just don't get it at all. As for Josh Allen, he's still the only quarterback in the league this year to not throw an interception.
yeah, yeah.
But you're right. He definitely did look concussed the way his head hit the ground there, the snapping of his neck. He shouldn't have come back into the game. And it was pretty evident based on those last three throws that he made, how awful they were. Even though he did finish the game 9 of 30 or something like that, those were still three of his worst attempts. So there is something definitely wrong with Josh Allen, and hopefully he is okay going into Week 6. But another ugly loss for Buffalo.
Well, 9 of 30, but they had some ugly drops in that game. They desperately need some wide receiver help on that team, I think, just to keep the offense functional. Now, talking coaching, Sean McDermott, I mean, we're talking about all these coaches on the hot seat. Robert Saleh first to go, Zach Taylor on the hot seat. There's some other guys we'll get to in a minute. But Sean McDermott, I mean, talking about wasting potential. I mean, this team is they're still going to compete because they still got Josh Allen, but they're looking like just a shadow of their former selves with like the talent that's departed from this team. It feels like their window has already kind of closed. I don't know. Like obviously it's not fully closed because they still got Josh Allen, they still got that core. They're always going to be competing, but man, it just feels like you got to make a decision here on Sean McDermott. You got to be assessing at the very least some sort of exit plan, some sort of contingency plan or, plan for moving forward, right? Someone who can manage a game at least, you know?
Understood. But the way that the situation is unfolding in New York and Miami, the division is in shambles. So at the moment, it's their division to lose, considering they still have to play everybody in the division twice still. That should be four easy wins, Miami and New England. Sorry, they already beat Miami once. So three easy wins, New England and Miami. And they play New York in New Jersey next week. So a win there would go a long way for them in sealing the division. Um, that being said, a loss could be catastrophic, and you definitely don't want to be in a situation where you're in the mix with New York and Miami, considering how poorly their seasons have started off to. You just want to separate yourself and put yourself in kind of the next tier above everybody else in that division. So we'll see next week against New York. It's a Monday night game. It's going to be a good one. But yeah, Sean McDermott on the hot seat. I think the only thing saving him right now was the fact that they probably have a decent outlook for the rest of the regular season, and they don't want to mix it up right now because they don't need to win a ton of games in order to clinch the division again. I'd say at this point, if they get to 10 wins, that's probably good enough to take the division by at least a game or two.
Well, if anything, and this is my opinion, if anything, that fact that they can win the division with probably just 10 wins is reason enough to say, okay, this is the year we fire McDermott because the Bills fans don't care about the regular season. They care about what do we do once we're in the playoffs, which it feels like a gimme. You have Josh Allen, you have this team, you're going to get to that, 10 win threshold, you're going to make the playoffs. But the Bills have been here every year. The Chiefs every year give them problems in the playoffs. You got the Bengals in the playoffs. You got the Ravens in the playoffs. None of the Bills fans care about the regular season. You just got to get to the playoffs, which it seems like they're going to do based on how the rest of the division is going. If there was a year to fire McDermott, it kind of feels like this would be the year because the division's not super competitive. You just need somebody who can manage games and, figure things out by the time the playoffs start. Because if you go into the playoffs at the end of this year with McDermott as your head coach, I'm not that confident if you're going up against the Ravens, especially the Chiefs. I mean, you just lost to the Texans, so you could run into them in the playoffs as well. So if you're thinking about doing it, kind of feels like now's the time, or maybe like, going into your bye week or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but the question is, who do you bring in?
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping that you can evaluate on your staff. Is there anyone who has, potentially better in-game management skills, which is kind of hard to know. I don't, I'm not positive that they have anyone else on their staff who's really been like an interim before. Um, I'm not too familiar. So it's going to come down to like what, when they assess their ownership or, their coaching staff, what they think, because you're not going to bring somebody in. It's pretty rare that you fire your head coach and replace them mid-season with somebody from outside the team. Although Jeff Saturday, we remember that, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
never know, but I don't know. Not it's just something they could do. I'm not saying they should do it, but it kind of feels like I said, if there's a time to do it, it would be now. But I don't know.
I like this Buffalo team. I think Josh Allen's a good quarterback. It'd be nice to see them make a run in the playoffs without having any elite wide receivers. Maybe they make a trade before the deadline to bring somebody like a Devontae Adams in. His name hasn't been linked to Buffalo yet, but um, maybe they make a move. But yeah, I mean, if they could find somebody internally to replace McDermott that would be better at managing games, I'm all for it.
All right. Well, talked enough about Buffalo. Let's move on. We had the Colts visit the Jags. The Jags were 0-4. They got their first win of the season, beating the Colts 37-34. High scoring affair. Um, the Colts are out multiple pieces, right? Didn't have Anthony Richardson again. Didn't have Jonathan Taylor. Had Trey Sermon filling in for him. Um, Joe Flacco did a heck of a job this week. 33 for 44. Insane. 359 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Can you believe that the Cleveland Browns could have this guy playing quarterback for them right now? Like,
Well, I saw it on Twitter earlier, somebody saying that Johnny Manziel is happy that he's no longer the worst quarterback decision in Cleveland Browns history.
yeah, I mean, you can't argue with that.
No.
No, even when we're not talking about Cleveland, we still get to, make fun of Cleveland. Now, the Colts did lose, right? Trevor Lawrence, 28 for 34. That's pretty damn good, right? 371 passing yards on those 34 attempts. That's unbelievable. That's crazy. 2 touchdown passes, did have a pick on the ground. Tank Bigsby was the big running back on the day. 13 carries for 101 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. That's over seven. That's 7.8 yards a carry. Pretty crazy. Brian Thomas Jr. in the air, 5 catches, 122 and a touchdown. Christian Kirk also added 88 receiving yards. They really spread the ball around though. Lots of guys caught passes. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9 different players caught a ball for this Jags offense. So pretty impressive stuff. Yeah, I think the same actually is true for the Colts. Colts had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Yeah, Colts also had 9 players catch a ball. So all offense in this one, really good passing numbers, and the Jags ran the ball well as well. Yeah, what did you think of this game?
Yeah, it was a good game. I mean, if you take a look, Indianapolis scored 24 in the fourth, and Jacksonville had to score 17 in order to hold on to the lead.
Yeah,
Um, you know, starting the season 0-4, the first win's never going to be easy, and Indianapolis really gave them a hard time. Um, but they managed to overcome that 24-point fourth quarter and hang on to the win. I like what I saw out of Trevor Lawrence and that Jacksonville offense. Seems like they kind of revamped everything that they've been doing earlier in the season, giving the ball more to Tank Bigsby. Before the game, they mentioned that they were going to try to get Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie phenom receiver, the ball more. He did have 8 targets. Um, Trevor Lawrence obviously played better and was more accurate with his throws. So a good sign for Jacksonville. Um, considering the Colts have a somewhat decent defense. I
yeah,
wasn't necessarily expecting this to be such a high scoring game, at least from the Jacksonville side, but I don't think that this is sustainable. They're not going to be able to score 37 points a game going forward. Their defense is still atrocious.
yeah,
I think they have a bottom 2 or 3 ranked defense in the league. I think they're second or third worst in the league in terms of point differential still. So they'll be able to, get a win here and there. But I don't think that either team is worth spending too much time on here. Like you said, Joe Flacco could have been starting for Cleveland. He seems to be a big improvement over Anthony Richardson. However, when A-Rich comes back from injury, I expect him to be the starter again immediately
yeah,
because he's such a big talent that you're not going to ride with Joe Flacco. You want to get him as much game reps as possible. Although it does seem like every other game he's playing, he's hurting himself. So maybe he'll go down again. Flacco will have to come back in. But either way, not no real playoff implications going forward for these two teams, in my opinion, anymore.
no, doesn't feel like it.
No.
Moving on, we had the Dolphins visiting the New England Patriots. Dolphins would win 15-10. I think we both took the Patriots. At least I took the Patriots in this game.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, this was one of those games, kind of like the last game. Who cares? I mean, sorry to say that to the Dolphins fans and the Patriots fans. I mean, for the Dolphins, you had Tyler Huntley, throw for 194. For the Patriots, you had Jacoby Brissett again, throw for 160. I guess you could say if you like defense, this is a good defensive game, but I think it had more to do just with sloppy offense, right? And a lack of talent on that side of the ball more than anything. Although I say lack of talent on offense, the Dolphins aren't without talent on offense. They have lots of it. It's just a matter of, getting the ball in those guys' hands, and that seems to be a struggle. Like Tyreek Hill, 69 yards, Jonnu Smith, 62, Jalen Waddle, 46. On the ground, Jalen Wright had 86. That was nice to see. And Raheem Mostert had 80. So at least you're able to run the ball, which is nice to see. And that, lends itself to why they won the game. They won the rushing yards battle. They had more total yards, more passing yards, way more first downs, 24 to 15. Really, it's just you're playing against an anemic Patriots offense. And so all you had to do was a little bit, right? You had to do something. And they were able to do that. They scored 15 points. That was enough to get it done. But yeah, just you want to see something from these teams, but I don't think this is the year really that it's going to come together. Now, if Tua comes back and he's healthy, that's a different story for Miami. But we got to remember, even when Tua was in there this year, it was pretty disappointing what we were seeing from them.
Yeah, I mean, these two teams are dead last in terms of points scored. Miami now was 60 and New England was 62. For reference, the next closest team is the Los Angeles Chargers, who just came off a bye, have 68. So they're still being outscored by teams who aren't playing. So
Yeah.
yeah, as you said, not much to talk about here unless Tua comes back, and even if he does, I'm not sure that's going to be enough to get him over the hump. However, the division is kind of in shambles. Buffalo always does seem to find a way to carve out the win. Um, like 80% of the league at the moment is either 3-2 or 2-3, so it's not too much of a stretch for Miami to make a fight to come back in if Tua comes back soon. But like you said, it's not likely.
Yeah.
Not likely to happen.
Yeah. All right, moving on. We got the Browns and the Commanders. I picked the Commanders in this one. I think you were saying this one felt a little bit like a trap game for Washington. I don't remember if you actually picked the Browns or not. I think you did. Did you pick the Browns?
No, no. I said there were two trap games this week. This game and Seattle and New York. I didn't
Oh,
pick the winner of either of those two games. I just
ah,
wanted to throw it out there. Now,
all right.
this wasn't a trap game for Washington.
Nope, nope.
I underestimated how consistent that offense is, especially that running game.
It's
Uh,
impressive.
it's very impressive. Just to throw it out there, as a rookie quarterback, they're leading the league in third down percentage, the 31 of 60, 52%. One of three teams, 50% or better. The other two teams being the Saints and the Ravens. And they also have the lead in a ton of other categories when it comes to average plays per drive, yards per drive, times per drive, things like that. They just move the ball. They move it efficiently. They don't turn it over a lot, and they always seem to find a way to get themselves in scoring position, and they
Hmm.
capitalize more often than not. So this is a top tier elite offense, and I think they're going to be able to put up points even against the best defenses, considering how efficiently they're able to run the ball. So big props to Washington and to Dan Quinn and to Jaden Daniels. I think they're probably the favorite right now to take the division, and Jaden Daniels is definitely on everybody's MVP radar. So that's something to look out for. First rookie MVP since Jim Brown on the table.
Well, rookie of the year at the very least, offensive rookie of the year. I will say that on top of Jaden Daniels just being electric in the passing game, Terry McLaurin being a big time receiver these days, the running game, right? I know you mentioned the running game, but this team has four very capable runners on this team. A guy like Brian Robinson, who last week, and I believe a couple times this year, already has eclipsed 100 yards on the ground. This week, he didn't do that. He only got 18 rushing yards on 7 attempts, but he had the two rushing touchdowns. There's three other guys, though, who can still run the ball on this team. Jaden Daniels ran the ball 11 times for 82 yards. Austin Eckler's still on this team. He ran it 6 times for 67. And then Jeremy Nichols had 7 carries for 44 yards, averaging over 6 a carry. So between those four guys, yeah, they're going to churn out a lot of rushing yards every single week. This week, it was 215 on the ground. Like it just seems easy for them. Like if one guy's hurt or banged up or just isn't getting going, the other three can pick up the slack. And if you do that and you control the time of possession every week, like it seems like they're able to do, like you look at the team stats for the Browns versus Washington. Washington just has like more than double the passing yards, the total yards, the rushing yards, the yards per play. They're all double. It's hilarious. Like they're just dominating. And so give props to their defense too. I know they're playing the Browns and their defense didn't play a great game against, for example, the Bengals, but they're doing enough and offensively incredibly impressive. And now they're playing a little bit of complementary football. That's what you want to see. Yeah, Washington's the favorite. I wasn't thinking that, beginning of the year. I thought they'd win a couple games. I didn't expect Jaden Daniels to be this polished, but at this point in the year, I don't know how you argue any other team in the division, as the favorite to run away with it. It's Washington's division at this point. They're 4-1. Yeah, I like them.
Yeah, I agreed. And they have a very interesting matchup next week against Baltimore. The two premier rushing teams in the league, and also two teams with questionable defenses this far into the season. So we might be in line for a pretty exciting shootout next week.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Moving on, we got the Raiders visiting the Broncos. It's pretty crazy. I think we both took the Broncos. I don't think either of us expected the Broncos to win in this fashion, 34-18. Um, my God. So we're looking at a guy like Bo Nix. We've talked about, can he show the flashes? Well, this week he was 19 for 27, 206 yards, two touchdowns, no picks. Broncos ran the ball a little bit, right? 13 for 61 for Javonte Williams. Not bad. Javonte Williams also added 5 catches and 50 yards through the air. So he was over 100 yards in scrimmage yards this week. Big contributor for the Broncos. He's a factor. He's a guy that, a couple years ago, he was one of the hot names. But coming into this year, I think a lot of people forgot about him. He's a big deal in Denver, at least for that offense, keeping it functional. Um, yeah, the Raiders, I don't know, man. I mean, Gardner Minshew had 2 picks. Credit to Broncos defense. They continue to be the real deal. No quarterback, like I said, has really looked good against Denver's defense. Like, Denver's defense might be, I'm thinking of who the other top defenses in the league are, and I feel like the Broncos are right there. Like, I don't know if there's anyone else you can really compare to the Broncos defense right now.
Minnesota.
Yeah, and Minnesota's doing it kind of in a unique way too, right? With Brian Flores.
Mhm.
But yeah, they're right there, I think, with everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, this game really comes down to one play, and that's the pick six. Up until that point in the game, I don't think Minshew had missed a pass. He was like 10 for 10, a buck 20, and he had the touchdown to Brock Bowers in the first quarter, which was a fantastic effort by Bowers, by the way.
Yeah.
But on that drive, they have the ball at Denver's five. It's first and goal. Uh, they call the perfect play where Minshew rolls out to his left. Bowers sells the block, hits the drag over to the left side of the field, and he's wide open in the front of the end zone. And Minshew just sails it over his head into the arms of Sertan and just takes it for pick six.
Yeah.
A better throw, that's a touchdown. They go up 17-3, and we're probably talking a lot differently about the outcome of this game. But that just flipped the momentum, tied the game up, and Denver didn't really look back. I mean, the next time that Las Vegas scored, Denver already had 34 points. So huge mistake by Minshew there. And I think that's probably going to be the breaking point in the season, if you want to call it that, looking back for what's probably going to end up being another disappointing season from Las Vegas.
Oh, I think that Panthers loss was probably it's probably the breaking point.
Sure, but I mean, if you mix that play, they score a touchdown, they go up 17-3 mid-second. I don't think the momentum flips in Denver's favor as much. They come away with the win. They're 3-2, and they're second in the division, and they have a winning record. So that's a very impactful play, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's just it just shows what Las Vegas is and has been, just a disappointing team.
Yeah. Well, the Broncos wearing their throwbacks. I mean, I was rooting for them, and I don't think they were losing that game. I think Destiny had it that they were going to win no matter what. Also noteworthy, Minshew ended up leaving this game. Aiden O'Connell had to come in. He was only 10 for 20, and he did throw a pick as well. So not great. I will say the bright spot on the ground game for the Raiders, Amir Abdullah, 5 carries for 42 yards and a touchdown. Amir Abdullah's been in this league now. I believe this is his this is his 10th season. No, ninth season in the league. No, it's his 10th year, I think. Yeah. So unbelievable that he's still around. He's still kicking. He's still making plays, especially with the injuries that he had early in his career. My man, Amir Abdullah. Amir should have won the Heisman
I would
every
say
year.
that Brock Bowers is the bright spot
Nah,
in
nah,
this
nah, nah, nah.
offense.
Amir Abdullah. Amir Abdullah, man.
Yeah, former Lion, of
Oh
course, it's
yeah.
got to be him.
Anyway, moving on. We got the Cardinals and the Niners. Cardinals won uh 24 to 23. This was an interesting one. The second half was really all Arizona. The first half, the Niners led 23 to 10, and then the Cardinals would go on to score 14 points in the second half to the Niners 0. Um, yeah, interesting game. Both teams now find themselves at 2-3 in the same division. Both teams have shown flashes. We obviously know what the Niners are capable of, right? We have high expectations for them this season overall, but 2-3, not really what you expected. And then for the Cardinals, Cardinals came out this year hot. They were looking like the real deal, but then they string some losses together, and you don't really know what to think. Well, now they beat the Niners, and so they're also at 2-3. So neither team is dead in the water. They both still have a chance at, stringing together a really good season and going on a playoff run. I know it's early in the season, but that's still the aspiration for both of these teams, right? It's just you got to play clean football. Brock Purdy had a couple picks. Kyler Murray had a pick. Neither team was really like, that pretty looking. Like neither team had the game that they wanted to have. I will say Jordan Mason continues to be a really good running back for whatever reason. 14 carries for 89 yards, 6.4 a carry. Like, I don't know. The other bright spot for San Francisco, of course, other than George Kittle doing what he does all the time, Brandon Ayuk finally showed up, right? So that's interesting. 8 catches for 147. Juwan Jennings only had the one catch for 13 yards. Debo also only had one catch for 11 yards. So nice to see Brandon Ayuk show up and actually earn his paycheck. But yeah, not a great game from I think both fan bases would tell you they want to see a little bit of a cleaner game from both teams, but yeah, both teams still very much in this division. What did you think? Were you impressed by either of these teams?
Well, um, Jake Moody was hurt, right, in the second quarter.
Yeah.
So I think it was the third quarter, maybe the fourth, where they opted to go for it from like fourth and 23
Hmm.
from the Arizona 27. A field goal there wins them the game. Of course, they don't get it. I think they had another opportunity later in the game to kick a field goal as well, but had a turnover on downs or a fumble. Um, but you mentioned Jordan Mason. He did have the fumble, unfortunately, late in the game that
Hmm.
gave the ball back to Arizona, where they were able to drive down the field and hit what ended up being the game-winning field goal. So a bit of a sloppy second half from San Francisco. I think Trent Williams said it best after the game that you know, they do have to work on some things and there are some signs of struggle, but there is no real cause for concern because the teams and the coach, or sorry, the players and the coach both understand the talent that they have on the squad, and they don't need a huge internal turnaround in order to get on track. They just need to clean up a couple of things here and there, which they're obviously very capable of doing, and they're going to turn back into the dominant force that we're used to seeing. Now, that being said, it doesn't seem like Christian McCaffrey is going to be done for the year. I've heard reports that he may come back late October, early November, which will be a huge boost to the offense, assuming that he's able to stay healthy when he comes back. Jordan Mason has been playing great, but adding Christian McCaffrey back into the mix is, you know,
Changes everything.
yeah, changes everything. So I'm not too worried about San Francisco. Seattle did lose back to back. They're only a game up. I think they still run away with the division when it's all said and done.
All right. And of course, the Rams are always in the hunt, right? No.
Well, not so much anymore.
Well, let's see, right? So we had the Packers going to LA this week. Um, I think we both took the Packers in this one, and the Packers won 24 to 19, despite some ugly football. Jordan Love had that, heroic play to avoid a safety, but instead took the pick six, basically the Carson Wentz special. And it's a play that Matthew Stafford's also made in his career with the Rams. Speaking of Stafford, he did not play great, and he's in an unfortunate spot where Stafford has to play great for this team, given the injuries of some of the players around him. If he's not great, this team doesn't really have a chance. He was not great. He played some ugly football on Sunday, and that meant that the team really couldn't compete. Like I said, they lost by 5 points, and that's with the defense getting the pick six. So not great, not what you want to see. If you're a Packers fan, hey, you finally won a game with Jordan Love. That's what you want to see. Good for you guys. Um, but yeah, Jordan Love, 15 for 26, 224, two touchdowns in the pick. Um, Josh Jacobs, he continues to get the bulk of the carries, 19 for 73 and a touchdown, a little under 4 yards a carry. Not as efficient as you want to be, but at least they're still running the ball. Tucker Kraft leading the team in receiving yards with 88 and two touchdowns. Big tight end for them. He's turning into a guy. A lot of people are beginning to learn his name, Tucker Kraft. So yeah, it's if you're the Packers, you're 3-2. You're still in that NFC North where every single team has a winning record. But you're right there tied with the Lions for wins with three, although the Lions have one less loss. Um, Everyone's sitting behind the Vikings. It's a long season, right? And you got to take it one game at a time, try to win these ugly games. And at the end of it all, hopefully the wins tally up and, you're at the top of the division. But, you know, I don't know. I'm not that concerned about the Packers as a Lions fan. Like they're a tough team, they're a gritty team, but in terms of just overall talent and depth and everything, I feel like the Lions are going to do pretty well against them this year. But I don't know. What did you make of this game?
Well, first of all, this is the first Jordan Love win of the season,
Yeah.
right? Malik Willis got killer two wins for Green Bay, and Love was 0-2 as the starter coming into this game. I wasn't really impressed by the Green Bay offense. Los Angeles had the 32nd ranked defense coming into this game and still have the 32nd ranked defense after this game. Um, you know, with the way that Jordan Love is able to air it out, especially what we saw last week against Minnesota, where they almost made that huge comeback against a very impressive Minnesota defense. I was a little surprised to see the struggle that they had. I don't think the Rams defense played too well. I just think that Green Bay struggled. So I guess we're probably going to see that from them, like having to come back from behind, not a lot to lose, able to air it out, finding open guys. He did throw three picks that game too, um, versus trying to manage a game when ahead early. I'm not sure that he's necessarily the guy to be able to do that for them so great at the moment. I was impressed with Malik Willis's ability to do it, but they also relied on the ground game much more was when he was the quarterback. So I think Love just has to figure out how to settle down when he's got the lead, make the right decisions, not try to force things too much, and good things will happen naturally. But it just doesn't seem like that's the type of quarterback who he is. But that'll come with time. But like you said, I'm not too worried about Green Bay within that division. I think Minnesota and Detroit at the moment are still clearly much better. And I actually, at this point in time, I think Green Bay probably struggles to have a winning record by the end of the year, just based on who they have left in their schedule.
Hmm. Well, we'll see how it goes. Speaking of the running game, Kyron Williams carried the ball 22 times for 102 yards and a touchdown. He's now tied for the lead in the league in touchdowns with seven, tied with Derrick Henry. So my preseason Offensive Player of the Year pick. He's not there yet. He's not leading the way right now, but I think by the time it's all said and done, he's hanging around, right? He's like
It's
Lamar Jackson,
possible.
keeps you in the game until the end, and then at the end of the season, he'll make his push, the late season push. Once
It's
the
possible.
once the Rams line gets healthy, right, it'll all come together. So he's hanging around, just letting you know he's still hanging around, not giving up on that pick. All right,
Okay.
moving on. We had the Giants at Seattle. Thought for sure Seattle was winning this one. You hedged your bets a little bit. You said, this could be a trap game, but you still picked Seattle. You were smart, right? You saw this coming. But yeah, the Giants won 29-20. Um, the streak continues, right? Teams that the Lions play go on the following week to lose by at least 9 points. This has happened every game of this season. right? We had the Rams get blown out by the Cardinals. We saw the Bucks lose the following week after playing the Lions. I believe it was to Denver, right? Got blown out.
Mhm.
Um, we had the Cardinals lose their game to Washington after playing Detroit.
Mm.
And now we see the Seahawks losing to the New York Giants. It seems like Detroit is just a team that wears down their opponents to the point that going into the next game, they're just completely broken, right? Like they can't compete in the trenches. Like they're just getting blown out. They're getting smoked because Detroit wore them out that bad. That's what it feels
Yeah.
like to me.
Well, Seattle didn't. I mean, if you take away Geno's runs between Walker and Charbonnet, they only had 7 carries for 30 yards.
Does Gino have the runs?
He had 4 carries for 72.
That was a joke.
So take away Geno's carries there, and the running backs only had 7 carries for 30. That's I don't I'm not sure that's so much a symptom of coming off of a bruising game against Detroit, but rather just a flaw in the scheme going into the game.
They broke
Uh,
them mentally, man. When you only give your running back 7 carries, that's a broken, psyche that the coaches have. That's what Detroit does to you.
yeah, I mean, Geno didn't play bad. He didn't play as good as he did in Detroit. He didn't turn
No,
the
he had a
ball over.
good game though.
Yeah, he did. He had almost 300 yards passing. He had 72 on the ground. But the problem here was that they just couldn't stop New York in the second and third quarter, which is surprising considering New York really hasn't been able to capitalize on their opportunities. Uh, Going back to last week, they did keep it close with Dallas, but they were never able to get it into the end zone. Uh,
Hmm.
they just ended up kicking all those field goals. But Danny Dimes, I mean, he looked pretty good. He had 2 touchdowns. He had 257 through the air, only sacked 3 times. He now has 3 games on the season with a quarterback rating over 100. So, even without Malik Neighbors, I
Yeah.
mean, he
Yeah.
was able to get it done. So, you I'm not. I'm on the fence about New York right now. To be honest with you, I think they may end the season as the better New York team.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, just given where they started this year, what the expectations were, I mean, they're running the ball strong. I mean, Tyrone Tracy subbed in for this game, 18 carries for 129. That's over 7 a carry. Darius Slayton, he's a guy who's been on this team forever, right? 8 catches for 122 and a touchdown. Shout out Theo Johnson, caught 5 balls for 48 yards, Windsor native, right? Went to our high school, Theo Johnson did. So I mean, yeah, there's talent on this team. Um,
Yeah,
they
and
got guys. So
I mentioned the defensive front earlier in the year. They haven't impressed too much, but they did have 7 sacks against Geno.
yeah,
Dexter Lawrence he's legitimate talent. They do have some guys on the defensive front seven that I think can be impactful. And as long as New York offense is able to capitalize on some red zone plays to keep the defense in the game, I think they may do all right this year. They may
yeah.
surprise some teams to come still.
All right. Dallas Cowboys visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Steelers were favored in this one. I took the Steelers pretty confidently, but the Cowboys ended up winning 20-17. Yeah, this was an interesting game. Not a ton of points scored. What was most interesting to me was you go into the fourth quarter, the Cowboys only have 6 points, Steelers only have 10. Not a lot of offense going on. But then late in the fourth quarter, each team has a long touchdown drive. Like all of a sudden, they just put together they string together this series of offensive plays. Both teams do. They just kind of figure it out, right?
Mm.
Ultimately, though, Dallas answered last, and there wasn't enough time for the Steelers to respond after that. And um, that was the end of that story, right? So I think at the end of the day, the takeaway for this is the Steelers need offensive help. Now, whether that means you trade for a wide receiver, Devontae Adams, somebody else, I don't know. Um, but I feel like the Steelers really just they need another piece on offense. I saw a stat about Justin Fields, he's like 2-20 or something like that. Only 2 wins against teams when his defense allows more than 20 points or 20 points or more. And that was kind of made out to be like a big deal. Look, it's a lot of it is like context dependent. I think Justin Fields is playing like he's impressing me this year. Now he didn't play super well in this game. He was only 15 for 27, but it's the lack of receiver talent, I think. Or, I mean, even the running game, right? You look at the running backs on his team, they don't really average over 4 yards a carry very often, right? They don't really have a threat on the running game. I know you have Najee Harris, but Najee Harris doesn't really he doesn't really pose a threat on the ground. They'll give him the ball a lot. He'll have the volume numbers, but they don't have an electric running back either, or an electric run game, right? So there's a lot of spots on this offense where they have the opportunity to improve, and they could do so through a trade or free agency or whatever. They just have to make some moves, and that's kind of a bold thing for a team to do. I don't know if Mike Tomlin would do that. Like I'm not sure that's what the Steelers are kind of in the market for doing. And I only bring it up because people are bringing the issue up that, oh, maybe they should, when Russell Wilson's ready to play, they should put him in. Maybe that's going to fix the offense. I think if anything, Russ is a better game manager than Justin Fields is at this point, probably. I don't know for sure. But you're not going to see Russell Wilson unlock some potential in this offense that Justin Fields can't. That's just my opinion. I feel like Justin Fields allows this offense to have a higher ceiling. So that's my take. If they want to improve offensively, which they do, because I mean they only scored 17 points, and you're not going to win a lot of games, in this league if you're averaging 20 points a game. You got to add another piece to this offense. I don't know what it is. People are saying wide receiver. I think that would be wise. But there's a lot of potential spots where you could add talent. So as for the Cowboys, I mean, this was a big game for them. If they had lost this game, like their season would be looking pretty rough. They're 3-2 now, as are the Steelers. Both are 3-2. Both teams still alive in this season. What did you think about this game? What are your takeaways?
Yeah, I thought this was a very important game.
Yep.
I think that Dak, despite the two interceptions, played very well in the fourth quarter, especially in that last drive, in order to win the game for them. Um, there was that fumble right on the goal line when I think Dowdo he tried to dive over, lost the ball, and Dak had to dive on it to save it. And also, he did have the touchdown to win the game with almost no time left on fourth and goal to Tolbert, who the previous play was kind of banged up a little bit. Now, I think that's kind of a breakdown in the defense.
Yeah.
Looking at that play again, it seems like the cornerback or the safety who was out there kind of lost him and allowed him to get enough separation to score a touchdown. But I was impressed by Dak being able to stay within the game, not get too overwhelmed by the Pittsburgh defense, and just doing enough to win with the 14 points in the fourth quarter. So uh, that's another good sign for Dallas is the fact that they were able to run the ball. Dowdle didn't have a huge game, but they did have the most rushing yards in any game this season so far
Yeah.
against the Pittsburgh defense, who is notorious for stopping the run. So some good signs there from Dallas. And as you said, a loss would have been pretty bad for them. But flipping over to the Pittsburgh side of the ball, I mean, this is how they've won their games this year. Um, their three wins, 18-10, 13-6, 20-10. They're just not a team who scores the ball a ton, right? They just rely on limiting turnovers, good field position, and their defense coming up clutch when it matters to prevent the other team from scoring late in the game. And that just didn't happen here, which is, excuse me, the reason for the loss. But talking about the offense, there was that situation before the season started where they almost landed Ayuk. Now,
Yeah.
Ayuk's no Devontae Adams, but he would have added an element to this offense that, it would have. I don't see how that could have been a negative situation. I think it
Right.
only would have added. Now, Jalen Warren, the other running back, is out. I do like him. I think when he comes back, Arthur Smith needs to find a way to get him the ball more. Um, Najee Harris is a good workhorse back, but he just doesn't have that explosive capability like Warren does. So without adding any weapons, you're right. I don't think they're going to be able to put up a ton of points, but I still think they're going to be able to win games on the back of that defense.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that that's how they've been winning games. This has mostly been out of necessity. I feel like you have the good defense and you lack the offensive consistency to be able to, win games by, running up the score. You look at the weapons they have. You have a talented guy like George Pickens, and you see everything going on with him. Like the media is calling it behavioral issues, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. But Mike Tomlin is coming out and saying, well, we have him on a snap count, load management as a means of attempting to make him more efficient with his snaps. I have no idea what that means. You give the guy less snaps so he has more of an impact on the snaps he's there. I don't think that's how it works. I don't know. But I think ultimately, if you had replaced, some of these receivers that they have, let's say you didn't have George Pickens, but you had an Ayuk. I know Ayuk comes with his own issues, but like, he's more reliable, I think, and you're not going to have him, on this sort of snap count because he's acting out in a game. I don't think. Maybe I don't know, you know. And but then if you have a guy like Devontae Adams, even I feel like he's way more reliable. So you add a reliable receiver to the mix who's not dropping passes in critical situations that you're able to depend on taking the majority of the snaps for offense. Like I feel like that's just going to make your team better, and you can put away games. Like it even helps if this is still the way you want to, play games defensively and manage like the clock and time of possession. Having a reliable receiver is an essential way to do that. If you don't have those receivers, that's going to be hard to do. So I still think it's worth it, even if, your mindset isn't, oh, we're going to turn this team into an offensive juggernaut. No, it's not the point. You just need a guy who's reliable in catching the ball and being on the field.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
The wins are still going to come on the end of their defensive performance, but you definitely need to score more points than they've been doing.
Yeah. They'll be above 500, but it would just be nice to see them add some talent.
Mhm.
All right, Monday Night Football. We got the Saints visiting the Chiefs. The Chiefs won this one 26-13. Wasn't exactly a close game at all. The Saints started the year 2-0. We remember those beautiful wins they had, scoring over 40 points, their defense doing their job against opposing offenses. They looked like one of the most well-rounded teams in the league. Looked like they were dominant. Looked like the Saints of yesteryear were back, those Drew Brees era Saints. But unfortunately, it's been downhill since then. 0-3 in their last three. Now 2-3 on the season, getting smacked in primetime against the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, Mahomes, the Chiefs' magic, it just kind of continues. Mahomes now leads the league in interceptions with six touchdowns to 6 picks on the year. It's really just been a year of defense, and that continued in this one. If you look at the Chiefs' stats in this game, Travis Kelce had 9 catches for 70 yards. He's been fulfilling his role that we're kind of used to seeing, at least since the Rice injury happened. And so he's now taking more, I think, reps than the Chiefs really wanted to. I think they kind of wanted to spare him for later in the year, but now he's having to take on a bigger role. Juju Smith-Schuster with a big game, over 100 yards in this one, 130 yards on 7 catches, his biggest game since the 2020 season. A lot of that work was making up for a dropped potential touchdown that ended up being an interception to one of the big guys on the Saints defense. So that kind of kept the game even closer than it could have been. They could have scored a touchdown there, the Chiefs. So big game from those guys. Kareem Hunt, another guy who's back with the Chiefs, had a big game. 27 carries, 102 yards, just under 4 yards a carry. He also had a touchdown and a 15-yard catch. So guys are stepping up. It's just an interesting performance by the Chiefs, and they continue to play this very weird style of football. Very defensive. They're not the Chiefs of a couple of years ago even. And that's something that's hard for me to kind of get over and recognize. Every week I see the Chiefs and I feel like they're underwhelming, even though they're 5-0. And I think part of it is just my bias. I expect more from them offensively because of how good they've been historically. But nevertheless, they're 5-0. What did you think of the Chiefs?
To your point, they're not having a good season offensively. In terms of passer rating, the closest quarterback to Mahomes' passer rating this year is actually Daniel Jones, right? Mahomes has an 88.9 passer rating and Daniel Jones has an 85.8. So if you think replace Patrick Mahomes with Daniel Jones, is the team still 5-0? Probably not, right? There's something about Mahomes, something about Reed, something about the way this defense is constructed that they just find a way to win games, even if it just doesn't show up on the stat sheet or if Mahomes is leading the league in interceptions. None of that really matters. What matters is the fact that they have the quarterback who everybody knows is the best in the league, regardless of how he performs, and it can go off for a massive game any week. And once they get to the playoffs, he turns into a beast. Andy Reid, who is probably the best coach in the league and has been now for a handful of years, and that defense led by Chris Jones, who just seems to stop any running back's ability to move the ball more than a few yards at a time, and they just shut you down. And I guess that's the recipe for success. It's kind of weird. I'm sure there's some, as we like to say, dark magic, some luck, some fortune, however you want to say it, mixed in with that, which causes them to win these games. But they just seem to be the best team in the league at finding a way to win.
Hmm.
As long as it doesn't show up on a stat sheet, but because of that, they're the number one team. Not much else to say there.
Yeah, I mean, stopping the run, you talked about that. Alvin Kamara, only 11 carries for 26 yards. It's 2.4 on the ground. They seem to have no problem shutting down any running back that they face. It'll be interesting to see when they, I mean, I know they played the Ravens early in the year and they seemed to shut down Henry. That seemed to be kind of before the Ravens really bought into this philosophy of, okay, let's give Henry the ball 25 times, right? So if they end up meeting again in the postseason, it'll be interesting to see how that goes because, again, you got the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. So I'd like to see them tested against someone like a Derrick Henry because right now they're shutting down everybody.
But again, in the playoffs against Kansas City, teams typically tend to move away from what got them there and change their game plan, and it never works out. Like I said, dark magic. Teams just don't perform well against Kansas City.
Yeah, the Andy Reid mustache magic. All right, moving on. We're gonna start making our picks for this coming week. Starting with Thursday Night Football, we got the Niners facing off against the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks currently 3-2, Niners 2-3. I'm taking the Niners in this one. I know Seattle was undefeated. They were 3-0. They've dropped 2 in a row now. One was to Detroit. Can't really knock them for that. They played a great game. But they are dealing with a lot of injuries. They just lost to the Giants. The Niners are a team that I think are really good at staying calm and collected. They don't panic. They know they have the talent, and the players know they have a coaching staff they can rely on. They're just going to stay the course, hang around, keep fighting, and eventually, come the end of the year, they're going to find themselves in a good position. So I don't think they're going to panic. They're going to be fine. They're going to win this game, even on the road. Give me the Niners.
Yeah, they're just a better team, and Brock Purdy has had a ton of success against Seattle in his young career. So I'm going with San Fran as well.
All right. Moving on, we got our international game for this week. We got the Jags and the Bears. The Bears technically being the home team. I think the Jags should be the home team for every international game because they seem to play there every year over in the UK, In any case, I feel like in these games end up being a little bit sloppy. I'm going to take the Bears just because of the Bears' defense. The Jags really showed me something last week against the Colts on offense. They finally started to click. But I feel like with the Jags defense being as bad as they are, the Bears offense is actually going to be able to outcompete the Jags defense or the Jags defense. So yeah, I think the Bears come out on top of this one.
I think the matchups heavily favor Chicago on both sides of the ball. I think it might be a race to 20, and I don't think Jacksonville gets there. I'd be surprised if they get more than 2 touchdowns. So give me Chicago.
All right. Moving on, we got the Cardinals visiting the Packers. This is a weird game for me. The Packers are favored by 5.5 points. I thought that was interesting. Do you think that's kind of high?
I don't think so. The Cardinals' defense hasn't been that impressive, and the Packers have the ability to establish the run. We saw how Arizona struggled against teams who like to run the ball. So, with Jordan Love at the helm, being able to air it out like he does, and Arizona typically struggles. They did have that very interesting win last week at San Francisco. They should really only be a 1-win team so far, but I got the Packers in this one. I'm not surprised by the line.
I'm yeah, my gut's telling me Packers, but I'm gonna pick the Cardinals because you got to manifest these things, right? Power of manifestation. You got to talk it into existence. Give me the Cardinals. Kyler Murray. He's a guy who can run too, and you know what? James Conner. That's a guy who can run the ball too. We talk about the Packers running the ball. Jordan Love's only won 1 game this year. I know they're 3-2. Jordan Love's only won 1 game. It's a game that he threw a pick 6 in, and he played a banged up Rams team. Okay, so I don't care. Give me the Cardinals. Cardinals are running the ball. They're going to control time possession. I'm talking myself into it. Give me Arizona.
I like it.
All right.
I like it.
All right, moving on. We got the Bucks visiting the Saints. Bucks and Saints, man, these are tough games to pick. especially in this division. The Bucks, I never know which Bucks are going to show up. Are they going to play any defense? I mean, the Saints seem to be a team where, yeah, they ran into the Chiefs defense last week, but maybe the Chiefs offense just isn't clicking the way that they were in the first couple weeks of the season, you know? I don't know. I feel like I'm going to take Tampa Bay, but yeah, I'm taking Tampa Bay. I know they're on the road. I was going to say Saints are at home, so I'm going to lean Saints, but I still feel like I'm taking Tampa. Tampa's just shown me like, yeah, both teams have had a high ceiling, but the Saints ceiling was so long ago, you know, week 2. Since then, they've done nothing. They've lost 3 in a row, and when you're just on a losing streak like that, it's really easy to skid, you know? It's just really easy to drop a bunch and just lose your way, so I'm going to take Tampa.
These divisional games are tough. I think New Orleans is going to bounce back.
Okay.
I think we're going to see Kamara have a big game, and Tampa Bay's not going to be able to keep up. So give me New Orleans.
All right. Moving on, we got the Texans and the Patriots. I'm taking the Texans. I mean, if the Patriots somehow pull it together and make this one competitive, like, great, you know, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I'm taking the Texans.
Drake May is starting this game.
Oh, he is? That's official?
He is, yeah. But that being said, Texans all the way. This would be a shock if the Patriots somehow managed to pull this one off.
Yeah. All right, moving on. We got the Colts and the Titans. I got to take the Colts. I mean, Colts are not even favored by a point. They're favored by half a point. It's basically a pick 'em. So, I mean, after what they did to Jacksonville last week, I mean, Joe Flacco's looking hot. You know, if Jonathan Taylor plays, I mean, that's a huge advantage as well. I don't know. His status is kind of up in the air at the moment. But Tennessee, they've just been playing some uninspiring ball, in my opinion. I don't know really what to make of them. They did have the bye week, so, you know, they will be well rested, so that's an advantage. But hey, if Jonathan Taylor plays, he'll also be well rested. So I'm going to take the Colts.
I tend to favor teams coming off the bye,
Yeah,
so I will take Tennessee in this one.
that's fair.
And I think the Titans are just going to be able to scrape by at home.
All right. We got the Browns visiting the Eagles. Do you know the spread of this game, Cody?
Let me guess. Is it 8.5?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Eagles are favored 8.5. I'm taking the Eagles because, I mean, I think I'd be stupid not to. Eagles coming off a bye week, and it's just about the best, like, you know, situation for them coming off a bye week. You know, you're playing the Browns. You know, former defensive coordinator that you're familiar with too, in Jim Schwartz. Not like the Browns defense has been playing too great the last couple of weeks, but you're familiar with that coaching staff and that scheme. I just feel like the Eagles, even if the Eagles have been playing some ugly games, you know, not playing up to their potential, you know, the Browns aren't even going to try.
Look, Devontae Smith and AJ Brown are back. So if the Eagles lose this game, it is catastrophic for the season. So this is a must-win for Philadelphia. So I'm taking the Eagles. They have to win this one.
Don't think of it as a must-win. Think of it as a surefire win.
It's a must-win.
All right. Okay. No one's more confident in the Eagles than Eagles fans. Let me tell you. All right, moving on. We got the Commanders and the Ravens. This is a game I'm excited for. Coming into this year, I think this game, if I looked at it, would not have even been on my radar as one that I would have had to watch, and that's why it's at 1 o'clock. But man, Commanders and Ravens. Ravens are favored 6.5, and you know, we can talk about both quarterbacks. You know, Lamar, obviously, 2-time MVP. He's been slinging it. He threw it really well this past week. You know, in previous weeks, not so much the case, but this week he had a really good game against the Bengals. Commanders, Jaden Daniels, we know what he can do through the air now. And the running ability of both quarterbacks we know as well. But the running game of both teams overall, I mean, Derrick Henry, yes, but the Commanders we talked about, they have 4 very capable runners on this team. Like, this is going to be a game where if both teams play it smart, it's going to be one of those, you know, low-scoring running games where each team is making 6-minute drives down the field back and forth, you know? But at the same time, it could get out of hand, right? It could turn into a shootout with the weapons that these teams have. So I really don't have any idea what to expect, but what I do know is that I don't think it's safe to say this is a blowout for Baltimore. I don't think that's safe at all to say. I'm feeling a little courageous. I'm gonna pick the Commanders. All right. Now I'm not super confident, but this game, And defensively, like, you gotta like the Ravens defense more than the Commanders, at least their potential. But the Ravens defense has not been the Ravens defense of last year either. Like, let's not forget that. So
The Ravens defense have been struggling, but the Commanders defense has been even worse.
yeah,
So I got Baltimore. They are at home. I think the opportunity to make mistakes is greater for Washington than it is for Baltimore in this game. So I think that just a couple of bad decisions from Jaden Daniels could flip the script of the game. So I'm going with Baltimore here.
well, luckily Jaden Daniels doesn't make too many bad decisions most of the time. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, next game we got the Chargers visiting the Broncos. Man, if you asked me a couple weeks ago, I would have said Chargers all the way. But now, you know what? The Chargers are a team that already they're not like a big offensive team. They usually rely on the ground game, and the Broncos are a team that just they got that phenomenal defensive unit. I'm kind of talking myself into Denver this week. The Chargers also coming off a bye. I mean, that might be why I'm kind of like forgetting, like, how impressed I was with them at one point, because it's been so long since I've seen it. And, they were banged up those last couple weeks. Yeah, it's been a while since the Chargers have won a game, week 2. So coming off the bye, though, I'm going to go Chargers. I do trust them more. They have more experience, especially at quarterback. But Denver's going to make this an ugly game. And I would not be surprised at all if the Broncos win this game outright.
Yeah, well, I think this is a good litmus test for the Chargers because Denver doesn't really score against good defenses. Like
Right.
even the win against the Jets, right? They only put up 10 points in a horrible offensive game. And they did lose week 2 against Pittsburgh, only putting up 6 points. I do have the Chargers as the top 5 defense in the league.
Yeah.
I think that Denver is going to struggle to score the ball, so I got the Chargers in this one.
All right. All right, we got the Steelers and the Raiders. Steelers are on the road, but you got to go Steelers, right? They've dropped 2 in a row. They're looking to get right. The Raiders have just looked horrendous. Yeah, give me the Steelers. This is an easy one for me.
I got the Steelers too, but I think this could be a little bit of a trap game
Okay.
for Pittsburgh. Although I am still committing to take them, I think that this I don't know. There's something about this game is just telling me watch out, but I'm still going with them.
All right. Yeah. All right, we got the Falcons and the Panthers. Falcons on the road, but I mean, come on, you got to take the Falcons. I mean, Kirk Cousins, was he going to throw for another 500? If he can throw for 500 last week against the Bucks, what's he going to do to Carolina? You know?
The Panthers are really bad. I don't think that they. It is a divisional game, so there's something, and it is at home. But yeah, give me the Falcons. I'm not thinking too hard about this.
Yeah. All right. We got the Lions going into Dallas. I'm surprised actually. The Lions are favored 3.5, and the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. Dallas has some ugly wins in there. They're both, they both got 3 wins. But the Lions are coming off their bye, so even though they're on the road, I kind of understand the spread in this situation. But yeah, I'm taking the Lions to win this game. Like I said last week, or a couple weeks ago, I'm Lions all the way this year. I'm not doubting them anymore. Lions all the way. Give me the Lions.
Yeah, the Cowboys have improved the last couple of games against the run. Now that being said, neither Pittsburgh or New York Giants have a great run game. So I think that the Lions coming off the bye are going to have something planned for them, and they're going to be able to break open that Dallas run again. So give me Detroit. I think this is a pretty safe pick.
Okay. Bengals, Giants. I'm taking the Bengals on the road just because it's necessity for them at this point. I know the Giants just came off a good win against Seattle, and the Giants are very capable of giving this Bengals defense some problems, especially if Neighbors plays. I don't really know what his situation is looking like right now. I haven't been paying attention, but I'm taking the Bengals because the Bengals lose. Man, 5 losses at week 6. It's not good. So give me the Bengals.
Give me the Giants.
Oh,
Yeah, the Bengals are struggling and they have an awful defense. And I think Neighbors and Singletary might be back. And excuse me, we saw Danny Dimes have a pretty good game against Seattle without his 2 weapons. Now, Joe Burrow, how consistent is he going to be? I mean, New York did just have 7 sacks
Yeah.
against Geno Smith last week. I excuse me. I think that the Bengals may overlook the Giants and may not respect their defensive front seven. So I think the Giants are going to take this one from them. Give me
All
New
right.
York.
It's a bold pick. I like it a lot. I could see it panning out. All right. Final game, we got the Monday night game. We got the Bills visiting the Jets. If the Jets win this game, I believe they could be in first place in the division. It's pretty crazy because they'd have the tiebreaker over Buffalo. But as it stands, I'm going to take the Bills. I know Josh Allen's shaken up, but I mean the Jets have a defense. I know their defense has at times looked like kind of questionable. Hasn't looked like the defense of the last couple of years. I don't know that has as much to do with coaching as it does personnel, but firing Robert Saleh, I don't understand how that helps the offense, which the offense has been the issue, right? So I don't understand how that makes it better. If anything, the team is now just kind of in disarray. So I don't see that really boosting the Jets at all this week. So assuming Josh Allen's okay, which I'm kind of banking on, I'm comfortable taking the Bills.
This is my game of the week. Like you
Really?
said, the winner, like if the Bills win, they have a pretty firm grasp in the division. But if the Jets win, they move up to first in the division.
Yeah.
And the Bills are coming off 2 losses against good teams. Not saying that the Jets are the same quality as Baltimore or Houston, but I think with Robert Saleh being replaced, it shakes up the team enough where they're going to play with some passion. And I think that Buffalo's going to have a hard time scoring against that Jets defense, who has been really solid since week one. So give me New York. I think this is going to be a really good game.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about players, getting a little bit of a boost because they, getting fired up and rallying when a coach gets fired. I don't know. I feel like Robert Saleh was probably like not disliked that much by most of the players. I don't know what Aaron Rodgers thinks about him. Maybe he's not too high on him, but I'm getting the sense that a lot of players in that Jets locker room liked Robert Saleh, and maybe this isn't exactly going to have a positive impact on the locker room. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we saw that interaction between the two with their game in New England. That was kind of awkward on the sideline, but apparently Rodgers was completely blindsided by the firing. I
Yeah.
find that hard to believe. But regardless of if the players liked him or not, I still think that mixing things up, for at least one game, is going to bring some passion to the field.
All right. Well, we'll see. All right. Those are the picks. We will be back next Wednesday to recap all the games of week 5 and make our predictions for week 6. We are the Checkdown Chumps. I'm Josh. This is Cody. Remember, if you like the show, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video with your friends. If you thought we were idiots in this one, if we got stuff wrong, please let us know in the comments. We'll make sure to read all of them because usually there aren't any comments, so it doesn't take that long to read them. Cody, any final words?
Yeah. Stay safe, be healthy, and go birds.
All right, go Birds. All right.